And good afternoon and welcome. It's the Burning Your program. Thanks so much for being with us. Our issues this afternoon, we did hear from Team Volusia. I'll tell you about my conversation with Keith Norton coming up in just a bit. But first, Stand Your Ground is back in play after the legislature had said that it was going to remain as we know it. There's debate about changing it. I, for one, think the legislature did the right thing when they set the law some time ago. A fast-rising member of the legislature joins us today. He is Representative Matt Gaetz. You know him for his accomplishments in the House. You also know that familiar name for his father as the president of the Florida Senate. The representative joins us live today on WNDB. Representative, it's good to talk with you again. How you been?
Oh, I've been great, man. I'm a big fan of the show and glad to be on.
Thank you so much. Okay, what's going to happen next? I thought you guys had, if you don't mind me saying so, closed the door on this issue. Is it up again for debate?
It's going to be up for a debate and a vote. The Speaker of the House has asked the Criminal Justice Committee, which I chair, to examine the fairness and application of Florida Stand Your Ground law, and we've had members of the legislature file bills to repeal not only the Stand Your Ground law, but also Florida's Castle Doctrine, which allows people to meet force with force if their home is invaded by an intruder. So Representative Alan Williams, a prominent Democrat from Tallahassee, has filed legislation to take those laws off the books. I don't support those bills, but we're going to debate them and have a vote on them. And my expectation is that a bipartisan majority of the Criminal Justice Committee will have the same view you do, Mark, and that is that Stand Your Ground keeps Floridians safer.
You know, I should know the answer to this, Representative, but is all of this the pushback from the Zimmerman trial, or was there something else that keeps this thing out there?
Well, I think that you've got a very vocal minority of radical individuals who want to use the death of Trayvon Martin and then the outcome in the Zimmerman trial to push a pretty radical anti-gun, anti-self-defense agenda. But if we look at Stand Your Ground, it's been a success by every metric. In the 5 years before Stand Your Ground was law in our state, the murder rate increased every year. In the 5 years since Stand Your Ground, the murder rate has gone down every year. So I think that, that's a pretty good metric. I'm sure there are plenty of reasons why that's been the case, but I've got to believe that putting criminals on notice, that if you attack somebody in the state of Florida, they don't have a legal duty to run, is probably a therapeutic thing to keep public safety at a high point.
I've gotten the impression, Representative, over the last 10 years, the voters sent a strong message to both chambers that they wanted hardline justice. Stand Your Ground, to me, does exactly that.
Well, we have a 42-year crime low in Florida, and I don't think that's by accident, and I don't think it's going to continue automatically. The reason we have a 42-year crime low is that we actually believe in being tough on crime and tough on criminals in our state. And when you start to disarm the law-abiding citizens of their ability to defend themselves, then I think you tilt the law in favor of the criminal. I'm a lawyer by trade, and I know that if one person has a legal duty to retreat when attacked, then the attacker has a corresponding legal right to expect retreat. I think that's backwards. I'm uncomfortable giving the government, prosecutors, judges, even juries, the ability to second-guess that split-second decision that someone has to make if someone were to break into their home or attack them on the street.
There have been some, listening sessions around the state, Representative, before this thing came to committee. This isn't something that just popped out of the ground yesterday. What's the process that voters and citizens are going to see before them? How is this going to work now?
Well, the governor had called a task force of people in law enforcement, prosecutors, legislators, to go around on a sort of a listening tour, as you described, and get feedback. And as you can imagine, the people that come out to those types of town hall meetings are people with a vested interest. Sometimes you don't get the silent majority at those types of events. What will happen now in the legislature on November 7th at 3 o'clock p.m. at the Florida Capitol, there will be a bill presented by a liberal Democrat African-American member of the legislature to get rid of Stand Your Ground and to get rid of Florida's Castle Doctrine. And we'll have hours of testimony and debate on that, and then we'll have a vote. One of the differences between Tallahassee and Washington is that, when Washington has a hearing on something, they just kind of blather on forever, and then you never really know where anybody is at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Well, here in Florida, we actually believe in taking a vote on things. So we will take a vote on whether or not to repeal Stand Your Ground and repeal the Castle Doctrine. And that way people can see where their representatives are on those issues.
Am I right when I say that, in general, people have a more clear understanding of what the Castle Doctrine is?
I think so. I think because the home is more associated with that sense of castle, that sense of self.
The Castle Doctrine's been in play for how many years? Do you know?
Oh, God. Yeah, longer than Stand Your Ground. I think it was 2
Yeah.
or 3 years prior to Stand Your Ground that the Castle Doctrine was passed.
Okay. The best that I think we can get out of the time that your committee is going to be dealing with this is a more clear understanding of the law that's in play as opposed to repealing it. And I know Benjamin Crumb and other well-known attorneys would like to see the thing totally removed. Have they provided any kind of evidence that there is a disproportionate application of Stand Your Ground against African Americans? Is that part of their argument?
It's part of their argument, but I think that the answer back to that argument is that Stand Your Ground is disproportionately used by African Americans. African Americans constitute about 16% of the population in Florida, yet they have asserted more than 32% of the Stand Your Ground claims. So African Americans are using Stand Your Ground at a higher rate than any other group in Florida. And, our laws ought to be blind to people's backgrounds and ethnicities. And I think that Stand Your Ground is a pretty neutral law in that respect. It simply says, no matter who you are, as long as you've got a lawful right to be where you are and you're not breaking the law, if someone attacks you, you don't have a legal duty to turn your back and run.
One of the things that I've always admired about you, as well as your father, is you've always been very transparent about making sure you showcase everything. So let me ask you this question. Is there any evidence out there that would lead a citizen to believe that there's an misunderstanding or an improper understanding by law enforcement on the application of Stand Your Ground? What I'm doing is I'm being devil's advocate. I'm looking for any possible reason to remove it, and, sir, I haven't found one.
Well, of course, there are cases where you'll have a law enforcement agency or even a trial judge who will make a mistake. That has happened to every criminal statute we've ever had on the books that has ever been the subject of prosecution. But that's why we have courts. That's why we have an appeals process. And so I think that you cannot look at any criminal statute and say, aha, here's one instance where there was an outcome that we as society don't like, and then to use that as an indictment against the whole law. Because we have a criminal justice system that by its very design tilts every advantage in favor of the accused.
Representative, I'm going to ask you if you can stay with us another couple of minutes. We'll open it for phone calls and then conclude our interview. Can you be with us for a little bit?
I'd be honored.
All right, we're going to take a break. Representative Matt Gaetz is with us, and this is a rare opportunity. You can ask directly questions of a man who's the chairman of the committee who's going to look at this. If you have a question about Stand Your Ground, please call us now. We have not been able to present an opportunity like this as of yet. This guy will answer your questions and answer them correctly. Our phone number is 239-0033. AT&T star 1150. An opportunity for a direct question to Representative Matt Gaetz when we come right back. We're talking about Stand Your Ground, a closer look at this controversial law. Representative Matt Gaetz is with me, and we have some time for some phone calls. If you'd like to ask the representative a question, we'll put you right to him at 239-0033, AT&T star 1150. Representative, as I understand it, the way that the law reads, it's the Florida statute, chapter 776, justifiable use of force. Was it the media that gave it the name Stand Your Ground?
No, I think it was proponents of the law because I think it appropriately captured what we were trying to do to extend the Castle Doctrine sort of beyond the walls of someone's home. Everyone understands the Castle Doctrine, I think, well, to be that if someone comes into your home unlawfully with the intent to do you harm, you have an ability to meet force with force. Well, what happens when you leave the home and are at a public park or walking down the street or, gosh, I think of my 81-year-old grandmother who still goes to Publix in the evenings when it's dark outside. I think about, a young lady who's walking from her college dormitory in the evening. When those folks are attacked, should they have to evaluate whether or not they have what the courts would call a clear line of retreat, or would we vest in them the ability to defend themselves? And I think we ought to do the latter.
What about when one is in their car? Is it coming under the same understanding as if one were in their home?
No, if someone is in their car and attacked, they would have to use the stand your ground law as opposed to the castle doctrine.
Okay. So it's really only to a dwelling.
For the castle doctrine. But again, the legislation that's been presented, I think, by the radical left in our state would do away with both of those laws. So whether you're in your home, your car, a parking lot, you are legally required to retreat if someone attacks you.
That's crazy. I mean, we often hear about if you're about to get mugged and somebody's pulling a gun or a knife on you, you give them the wallet because, you know, you only have one life. But from what you're telling me, you would be required to simply give up and run away every time you're challenged?
Well, under any circumstance where you have a line of retreat. And that's the bizarre thing about crafting laws that are inconsistent with human nature. I mean, we know from human nature that when someone is in a compromising conflict like this, it triggers in every person fight or flight. So this is trying to legislate human behavior, where we would legislate a requirement of flight over fight. And I think that puts the law on the side of the criminal, not on the side of the law-abiding citizen.
Am I reading this wrong, or my fear on this, Representative, is this will create or embolden criminals if they have gained this power that the person that they're pursuing or attacking is required to retreat if it's available to them. You've just emboldened them to be more aggressive, have we not?
Of course, and that's why I'm glad that in Florida we've got 1 million people who have concealed carry permits. I'm glad we have strong self-defense laws, because I want criminals to be on notice that in Florida we're not serving up hapless victims to people who would commit muggings or robberies or rapes or murders. I mean, I think that that's what has kept our state safer. And, look, you've got a circumstance where the media has portrayed Stand Your Ground as a license to go and pursue people and attack them. And that's simply not true. Stand your ground defenses and castle doctrine defenses only apply to people who are the victim. If someone is the initial aggressor, they can't claim stand your ground. So if someone goes and picks a fight, and then the person they've picked a fight with, pulls a gun or a knife, the person that picked the fight doesn't then have a stand your ground defense.
You know, the thing I don't get, too, is that Stand Your Ground did not apply in Trayvon Martin. Isn't that correct? I mean, Stand Your Ground really wasn't on trial during that trial, was it?
Well, it wasn't. And the reason it wasn't is that the defense couldn't prove that Zimmerman was not the initial aggressor. And remember, if you're the initial aggressor, you don't have a Stand Your Ground defense. So the defense in that case went with the typical self-defense that's embodied in common law. They didn't use Stand Your Ground.
Why would the family be pushing this agenda, the family of Trayvon Martin, when it's apparent it didn't apply in this incident? What's in it for them, do you think? I realize this is conjecture, Representative.
I think it's misplaced grief. I think that the parents of Trayvon Martin have undergone a grief that certainly most people have never undergone. That is the loss of a child. Whenever we lose a young person in our state, under any circumstance, it's tragic. It's unfortunate. But using that death and the Zimmerman trial to try to go and make all 18.5 million other people in Florida less safe, I think is a misplaced use of that grief.
Well, to get right to it, with both chambers controlled by Republicans, and this being an initiative introduced by the minority, what's the likelihood of a change?
Well, I think in the committee that I chair, a change is not likely. But I regret to tell you that in the Florida Senate, they're already tinkering with the Stand Your Ground law in, I think, very unfortunate ways. Senator David Simmons, a Republican, has joined with the Democrat leader of the House, Senator Chris Smith, in proposing legislation that erodes some of the immunities that people who use a stand your ground defense enjoy. And fortunately, it takes two chambers to pass a bill, and so those aren't changes that I would be supportive of. But we should not ever, and it's actually a point you make often on your show, we should never take for granted that just because someone has an R after their name, that they are necessarily a conservative or that they necessarily ascribe to common sense in every circumstance.
Understood. What has the Senate President shared with you about likelihood? Is there a companion series of hearings on the Senate side?
Well, the Senate has already started hearings on the stand your ground issue, and what has germinated from those hearings has been a bill that I wouldn't support, and I don't believe the Senate President would support. I mean, we're of the same ideological strain. He's obviously my father, but I don't suspect that the Senate President is going to support changes that erode the rights of law-abiding citizens. I mean, who in their right mind would?
Representative, has the Attorney General weighed in on the issue?
The Attorney General is a strong supporter of the Stand Your Ground law. She always has been, and I think both General Bondi and Governor Scott have made their positions abundantly clear that, after all of the debate and all of the discussion, we have arrived at the conclusion that our laws are working in Florida. We're at a 42-year crime low. The murder rate has gone down every year since the Stand Your Ground law was adopted. And so let's not go try to monkey with that system just to appear sympathetic to a family that has suffered a loss. I mean, and that's what this would be. This is not, changing Stand Your Ground is not good public policy, but there are those who want to have changes just because it will appear sympathetic to these very sympathetic characters. But that's not a responsible way to govern.
And before you go, you said the hearing, did you say it's next month? It's December, isn't it? Or is it November?
No, it's this. It'll be November 7th.
November 7th.
November 7th, next Thursday. To all of the constituents out there, I know that we've got at least one member of the Criminal Justice Subcommittee who's in your listening area in the Daytona area. Very strong member of the legislature, Dave Hood.
Yep.
And so I would suggest that folks in the listening area send emails, make phone calls to people who serve on the House Criminal Justice Subcommittee and let them know their views, whether they're supporters of Stand Your Ground or whether they have another.
Representative Matt Gaetz joining us live today on WNDB. Representative, it's always good to talk with you. Thanks for giving us the time. Good luck with the hearing, and look forward to seeing you next time we're up in your neck of the woods.
Thanks, Mark. I'd love to be on the show anytime.
All right, sir. We'll talk to you soon. All right, sir. We'll talk to you soon. All right, sir. We'll talk to you